Welcome to the Navigator's Compass, the podcast that takes you inside the world of career and technical education. We bring you the stories of the dedicated educators shaping the next generation of skilled professionals and take you inside the modern CTE classroom, where hands-on learning meets real-world success. From the first spark of interest to mastering their craft, competing on the big stage, and launching lifelong careers, we showcase the journey of students turning their passion into profession. CTE isn't just an education, it's the key to a future filled with opportunity, innovation, and success. So whether you're an educator, a student, or someone who believes in the power of skills-based learning, join us as we explore the people and programs making an impact in today's workforce. This is the Navigator's Compass. Let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Navigator's Compass podcast, where we highlight the people of career and technical education in Anderson County. On this episode, we've got Sharon McGhee, cosmetology teacher at Anderson County Career and Technical Center. Sharon is a 1990 graduate of Anderson County High School. After graduation, she was a stylist at Hair USA from 1990 to 2011. She earned her instructor's license from the Tennessee School of Beauty. And in 2011, she was an instructor at the Tennessee School of Beauty for a few years. After that, from 2013 to 2018, Sharon was a cosmetology instructor at Fulton High School. And then at 2018, we were able to steal her from Knox County to Anderson County, and she has been the cosmetology instructor at ACCTC since 2018. She's been married to Joe for 27 years. She has 3 kids and 3 grandkids. So Sharon, welcome.
Thank you.
So I always want to start with like your origin story. So, you've had this career out in the trades, and then you like most of the folks in our building, and then you want to come back into teaching. So which teacher was most impactful to you as a student, or which teachers?
Okay, so I had 2. One was in 8th grade, and her name was Miss Harmon, and she was my 8th grade history teacher, and she was just always full of energy, just always made it fun, didn't let us just kind of sit there and get bored. She always had a fun story to tell about something in history. And then Miss Stair, who was my cosmetology teacher at Anderson County Career and Technical Center. She was the original teacher that was hired in, and I started with her and finished with her, and she was amazing. She always knew what to tell us, knew what to say to us, and she was very impactful on my life, especially as a teenager.
So they kind of helped cast the mold on the type of teacher you are and the type of teacher you wanted to be?
Absolutely. That I wanted to be them so bad, just to represent my industry at that point when I got with Miss Stair, because she made it so much fun to give back to the kids. And of course with Miss Harmon in 8th grade, I wasn't always the studious student, and she made me want to learn. She made me want to be better at school.
So going into high school, how did you know that you wanted to, or when did you know that you wanted to be a cosmetologist, a stylist? When did you figure that out?
It went way back, like when I was literally 4 and 5, and I used to take my aunt, who was just a couple years older than me, and take her baby dolls, and I would cut their hair. And my grandmother would buy her more, and I would cut more of her baby doll's hair. I always enjoyed seeing makeup, or being in makeup, being in hair. My mom always, every day, always done her skincare. She never went a day without it. Always fixed her hair, always tried to look her best. Even when she would get up and go to work. She worked in a factory, and she didn't care. She always had to always look her best. She still checks to make sure I have lipstick on when I see her. So, she was very impactful.
So if you remember back, so the classroom you were teaching in was
Yes.
the classroom that you were taught in.
The original, yes.
Yep. Now it's changed a lot. The
Yes.
equipment's changed, but the footprint has not changed. So
Right.
what was the class, what was cosmetology like during that time in terms of like, what were the things that you were taught and the type of things that you did in that class back then?
So Miss Stair was a lady of compassion. She was a lady of great talent when it came to hair, makeup, nails. So she taught us how to present ourselves, how to be a professional in our industry. She taught us the trade, the basic skills that we needed, because with a lot of things, if you can learn the basic, you can always add on and grow in the industry because it's ever changing. But if you learn those basic skills, she said, you will always be able to perform your job.
So she focused heavily not on the technical skill, but also the soft skills or the professional skill.
Absolutely. She made us, as she would say, act like ladies. We learned a valuable work ethic because she was there. She was always dressed. I don't ever think I remember seeing her without a pair of pump heels on or a skirt or dress pants. And she just always looked the part. She always looked like a professional.
So you earned so back then you can earn all of your hours
Right.
at the secondary level in high school. So you left high school as a licensed cosmetologist with your hours.
I left with 1,500 hours, which is what the state of Tennessee says you have to become a cosmetologist. And we could get every one of those back then. Of course, we wanted to be in that class as much as possible. And so when I graduated, I took my written test, because there's two separate tests. You have a written test and then you have a skills test, a theory and a practical. So we took our written first. I passed it, and then I had to reschedule. And back then I took it at Walter State Community College, and I had to take my skills test, and I passed, and my license was November of 1990 is what it still says.
So you were 18, 19 when you started?
17.
17.
17.
So what's that like going from 17 years old in high school to 17 years old in that trade, in that environment? Because it's a different environment, right?
It is a different environment. Of course, that's been a few years ago, as we have talked. And back then, we didn't have all the social media. So when we came out of our little community and got into this big world, it was eye-opening. We had no idea what was really out there besides what we could see on TV or hear about or take a trip to. And when I started working as a beautician, everybody looked at me like, "You're so young," because I was young. But the older women in the career always took us in and worked with us and taught us the trade that you needed after you passed your test, because there's a lot of things that kind of you learn as you're working your trade. You grow more than just getting that basic skill in school.
So a lot of on-the-job training.
On-the-job training.
So talk about the soft skill of working in a salon, because you're dealing with the public, right?
Right.
And you may have me come in and I've had a terrible day. You may have somebody else come in and have a great day.
Right.
So how important is that in that field, so that your students can understand?
So, and especially in this day and time, I start out in what we call Cosmetology 1 when they first come in, their first level, and we start out with life skills. That is, we start out kind of with the history of cosmetology and careers. Then that second chapter is life skills, or the second thing that I implement in my classroom. And then I teach it for the rest of the time, the rest of the 4 years or 3 years that they're in my class, how to be kind, how to de-escalate and not have confrontation. That if you have to talk or have a client who is upset or had a bad day, I try to teach that conflict resolution, that you don't have to take that person home with you. You have to be kind to that person, and you have to love that person right then. That is your light bill, that is your water bill, that is your cell phone bill, your car payment, and not only that, you're having compassion. And I tell them when they first come in, if this is not a job where you like to deal with people who can get very upset or have a bad day, then they might want to rethink. It is a hands-on. We are providing a service. You are providing a service for someone who is paying you, and you have to be kind. You have to be presentable. You have to be compassionate, but you also have to let it go at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, you can't take it all home with you, which is something, of course, some of us struggle with. But we teach from that Cosmo 1 level. Also, I have them do little scenarios where I break the students up, and I have clients and I have stylists. So put the stylist in the hallway, teach the client what to say, or the stylist what to say when they go get their client. I make them introduce themselves. We talk about eye contact. We talk about handshaking. We talk about bringing them in, trying to figure out. I give them a scenario where they have the client, when they come in, actually has something going on, and the stylist actually has to tell me, part of their grade is to tell me what, number one, the client wants,
Right.
and how did they get to that decision with what was going on in their life. So we have cell phone issues, we have people coming in who are crying, maybe you're doing hair for a funeral, and they have to, one who talks all the time, one who doesn't know what they want, so they have to kind of listen. We talk a lot about listening and not talking, listening to what your client says, reiterating what your client says. If a client comes in and is not happy, then how do you deal with that? Like, what do you say to them? What do you say when you hear the gossip in a beauty shop, which we all know, lots of gossip, lots of stuff that goes on in a beauty shop. So I try to teach them just kind of how to deal with people.
And so that, I mean, you experienced all that.
Yes.
Except for the social media, for 20 years.
20 years, 25 years, because I kept working for 5 years after I started teaching.
Okay. So what was the spark of like, okay, I want to leave industry? Because I know you went back to earn your instructor's license
Yes.
at Tennessee School of Beauty. So what sparked like, okay, I want to leave industry and go try this and be an instructor at the post-secondary level? So you're working with adults, but what was that spark?
So like I said, back when I was in high school, I always wanted to be Miss Stair. I wanted to teach like Miss Harmon, but I wanted to be Miss Stair and give back to the community, because everybody had always been so good to us. When I was in school, in her class as upper level, third level, we could have people from the public come in. And we worked with, as students, we worked with the people from the public, and they were always so good to us. And she just always, Miss Stair was always so good to the public and to the kids in the class. And I wanted to get to a point where I could go back and teach what I had learned, because it is an exciting career and it's an ever-growing, money-making career. Did I ever leave here? No, but I know that there is so much money to be made and so many different opportunities for our students to go and see the world when they would have probably never gotten to. And I'd worked hard behind the chair. I raised 3 kids behind the chair, and I wanted to be able to give back, because it's rewarding. To me, it was a good way to get up every day. I tell my students it's a great way to get up every day and go to a job. You can go pretty much when you want to go, whatever time you want to go. Get started if it's 12, 10, 6 in the morning, 8 in the morning. If you want to work afternoons till 8, 9, 10, whatever. Weekends, no weekends. You get to pick pretty much what you want to wear within reason. Depending on where you're at, you may get to keep more of your money than just your base pay. It's a career where you can travel, you can be on stage, you can work in a nursing home, you can work in a funeral home. I mean, there's so many opportunities.
Yes, very diverse opportunities.
Absolutely.
A lot of places. So you've went from the field back to now you're back to school.
Right.
So what's that like? Because a lot of the folks in career and technical education have spent a substantial part of their life in a professional capacity, and now they're going back to school.
Right.
So there was a 25 year gap where now you're going back to school at Tennessee School of Beauty. So now you're a student again,
Right.
learning to be
Right.
an instructor. So what was it like being a student again after that many years?
Right. So while I was in school, I still had to work outside of the classroom. Plus, and then when I started with Tennessee School of Beauty, I was working there as kind of a junior instructor into an instructor, and I was still raising 3 kids, and I had a son who was getting ready to graduate when I started, one who was in middle school, and then one that was in elementary school. And so it was, I always heard their conversations about social media, because I didn't have a lot of time for social media or the internet or anything going on. So when I went to teaching, from being in the shop where I had time to do everything I needed to do and be at home when I needed to be at home, it was kind of a big change.
So full-time mom, wife, still cutting hair,
Yep.
and you're going back to school to learn to be an instructor. Okay.
Yep.
So what was it like being an instructor for adults. So now you're teaching, because that's where you really started teaching, was not teenagers but adults.
Yes.
So what was that experience like?
So I guess my outlook on it was I was teaching adults, but at the same time, when they're first coming into beauty school, most of them are still pretty young. So I felt like I had a lot of experience to give back. Their problems are a little more extreme, I guess, as they get into that young adulthood. I mean, teenagers are extreme, but young adults, they handle things just a little bit different. So getting to work with them, though, and be on the floor and see the new stylists who are going to be stylists do so well and grow and have those aha moments when at first they can't get something, but then they get it. It was pretty neat. It was a lot of work, but it was pretty neat.
So how many would be in a, let's say you'd be in a class, like when you were the instructor at TSB, how many would be in a class, let's say?
I think most of the classes when they would go into the classroom were 20, because to have a school you have to have at least 20 seats, if I'm not mistaken. 20 students, 20 chairs. So that was most of the time the amount that could be in a classroom. And on the floor, the stylist just, sometimes you need more, sometimes you need less, but there was 20, if I'm not mistaken, there was 20 chairs.
Is it super competitive to get into a school like that? Is it hard to, or is there a waiting list?
There are waiting
Back
lists.
then, I guess?
At Tennessee School, I can speak for Tennessee School of Beauty. They, from what I remember, they go on a monthly, they start new classes almost every month. And depending on how many was in that month, they may push you back a month or two. So the sooner you realize you want to be in that atmosphere and go back to school or go to school, beauty school, if you've never even been, you want to go as soon as possible because it does fill up.
So when did you make the decision, like, all right, I've went back, I've been an instructor, I'm working with young adults, pretty challenging environment. Teaching is challenging, it doesn't matter what age. But then you're like, hey, I want to jump in both feet and go and teach at the secondary level, which is high school. So now you're backing up, a few years. So what was that? Where did that decision come in? Why?
The transition?
Yeah.
So working in a post-secondary school and working with adults and being in the atmosphere that's just like a salon is great. Tennessee School of Beauty is an amazing place to have a career. It's an amazing place to go to school, and I'm not just promoting them, but that's just where I went to get my instructor's license. And then to transition, oh my goodness. So I heard some other instructors talking about a position that was coming open in the Knox County school system. And I thought, well, some of these young instructors are going to apply and they're going to get it because, they're young and they're more up to date with things. And yeah, I was raising teenagers, but I guess my heart just, I don't know, something about it sounded appealing to me, and I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to give back. And I have always wanted to come back to where Miss Stair was, to that classroom, because it was so impactful. Because if I hadn't had her and hadn't had that trade, I can get teary-eyed talking about her, I wouldn't have made probably anything of myself, because she gave me that opportunity. I was not a 4-year college student, and I knew that. And probably a lot of people knew that I was not a 4-year college student. But that was my passion, and that's where I wanted to be. So when I found the opportunity to go back, it wasn't Anderson County, but it sounded interesting. So I thought, well, this will, maybe get my foot in the door. So I applied, and I got it. And I don't even know that I've told you this. The day I accepted the position, I will never forget it. I went back and I went to Mr. Brown, who owns Tennessee School of Beauty, his office. I was just crying. I said, I've applied for this job and I've got it. And he looked at me like, what? So him and George, the other guy who were there, they were like, well, okay, that's fine. They were super supportive, super nice. And I remember leaving to go to lunch that day after I'd gotten the phone call. And someone from Knox County called and said, so when are you starting back to school? And I was like, back to school? What are you talking about? Because remember, I was not the most studious. I was not the most studious student. So they said, to work in a public school system, you have to be a licensed educator. And I was like, what? What do you mean a licensed educator? I have my instructor's license. They were like, oh no, you have to go back and get your instructor's license. And I was like, I don't, and then I started thinking, maybe I don't want to do this. Like, I wonder if Adam will give me my job back, because I didn't want to go back to school. And they were like, yeah, you got to go to a college, or, to these classes. And I said, educational classes? And they were like, yes.
Yeah, so an education prep program.
Yes, an education prep program.
So where did you go and what was that like?
Well, I almost quit right then before I could get even hired. So we had a program in Knox County through Lincoln Memorial, and I did classes there 2 nights a week for almost 3 years.
At Lincoln Park?
At Lincoln Park.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I know where that's at.
Sure did.
So you do that, but so you're going back to school as you're teaching
I am.
high school students, and you're still a mom.
And I'm still a mom.
And a wife. So
not just a mom of, well, like I was talking the other day, a mom of a teenage girl who cheered in high school, who had basketball games 2 nights a week on some semesters, and a middle school cheerleader who had ball games 2 nights a week, and a husband who worked like a split second, third shift. So yeah.
Super busy.
And I did hair on the side.
So what was that? So what was that first day like? That first day in a high school classroom? Because I remember my first day of teaching and how I was introduced to that world at a middle school. So how was your first day at a high school?
It was definitely challenging and different and scary. I know even still when I walk in for the first, or when the kids come in for the first semester or the new part of the semester, I am still get the butterflies that I got that very first day, because every day you are the one being impactful on these young adults' life. You're the one who has to show them how to be a professional, how to act like someone who maybe has a little sense about what they're doing. And my job every day to walk in there is not to always make them happy, but to hopefully educate them and help them become a productive citizen. And when I walked into Fulton High School, I was a nervous wreck. And I had been in my classroom for, I guess, a couple of weeks at that point without students. So I'd gotten familiar with the school, with my area that I would be teaching my students. And I just decided, hey, this is honestly that it's what the Lord called me to do. And I knew that. And you were talking about the transition. I had to do some hard praying before, and I have to say that because I would have never been able to do it. But it was the right decision, and I knew that at that time. So when I walked in that day, and those kids are all sitting there looking at you, and you're like, "Oh Lordy, what have I done?" I wanted to turn around and leave, and I just told them, because students get really attached to their teachers a lot of times, and especially I can't speak for the subject matter that I don't know, but for our career and technical students, we are close to our students for the most part. We become pretty impactful. Like I said, I remember how impactful Miss Stair was in my life, and I had made that decision, hey, I'm going to be who they need me to be. I'm not their friend, but if it turns out we get to be friends, then that's great. I'm not their mom, but sometimes I feel like I talk to them like I'm their mama. So that day, I just told them, I said, I know you loved your teacher, and she had to go and do some different things because they were very disappointed.
Yeah, so for a typical high school teacher, they may have a student one time. They
Right.
have them in an English class or a math class, but career and technical education, you may have that student, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. You may
Right.
have them 3 or 4 times in their career, so there is that strengthened relationship. And,
Yes.
and I think that's one of the major strengths of career and technical education is you guys have the ability to really get to know your students, know their story.
Absolutely.
Because everybody has a story.
Everybody has a story.
Everybody has a story, and it's all impactful.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're getting around to like 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we steal you from Knox County, and you come back home where you wanted to be.
I did.
Right.
I had promised the students when I started working at Fulton. Like I said, they were very upset their teacher was leaving. They have a new teacher in. They kind of try you to see like how you're going to handle things. They found out real quick I was pretty tough myself and very strong-willed myself. I learned a lot not coming from Knoxville, coming from a little country school, about how to handle yourself and how to to be there for them, to always, that you're not their parent. You don't have to give them guidance, but you're not the one going home and disciplining them at night. So I learned a lot about listening instead of talking those years there. So I always wanted to come back home to Anderson County, but these jobs are just not jobs that come open very often, and they don't come, people don't leave very lightheartedly. Like if you leave, you have really had something else come up that is either going to fit your situation for your life or your story at that time, or you're retiring. And Miss Dare, of course, had retired, and there was another teacher who had been there for years, and you hate to want somebody else to quit, but I was like, okay, when's this lady going to, retire? Well, then they hired somebody else. So I was like, and then when I applied, I told my students, I told my staff, or the people, not my staff, but the people I worked with, and my co-teachers, that what I was doing. And, I'd gotten really close over the last 5 years I'd been there with a lot of people and a lot of students. And they were like, but Miss McGhee, if you leave. And I said, well, it's okay. Like, I love you, and I'll only leave if it's Anderson County. I'll never go nowhere else. And then I finally got the call. And I was tickled to death to go to Anderson County, but I missed my home. Fulton will always be my home. Once a Falcon, always a Falcon. Yeah. But I'm so thankful to be home where I was raised and where I can hopefully give back to the community that I love.
Well, we're glad to have you, that's for sure. So now we're getting into like your students coming. So if I'm a student, right, and I'm coming out of 8th grade, mm-hmm. and so your class, for folks that don't know, it's a blended class. So you have, as they go through the program, it goes from maybe a core class that's a Clinton only, or a core class that's Anderson County only, and then by the time they leave the program, the classes are usually blended.
Yes.
To where it's a mixture of both students. But talk to me a little bit about what the program of study looks like, going from the level 1, and what they can expect kind of coming in the door, like, because they're coming out of 8th grade,
right?
And they're coming in as freshmen, and in your classroom, I mean, it's a fully functioning salon.
It is.
I mean, how many chairs are in there?
25.
Yeah, I mean, mm-hmm. It's a fully functioning salon with shears, scissors, all
Everything.
that stuff. So talk about that, like the different levels and what that looks like at each level.
Okay, so Anderson County and Clinton High School, as a whole, as our county, and the middle schools, when they're coming in, a lot of times we get the opportunity to meet our 8th grade students coming in from our elementary schools. So I've had a chance to talk to them. A lot of those kids, because they get to pick 1 or 2 of the classes they'd like to visit with at the Career and Technical Center. And when I'm blessed enough to get those students, they get to walk through and they get to see the kids actually working. They get to talk to my students. So a lot of them have made their mind up, hey, I definitely want to take cosmetology or try to get cosmetology that first year. Mm-hmm. Used to, we didn't serve freshmen. We couldn't go as freshmen into cosmetology. We had to wait till we were sophomores, but now we can. So we bring freshmen in. My first semester is Anderson County students. My second semester, Cosmo 1, is Clinton High School students. So that first class, as they come in, we learn just the basics. We learn how to, about the history of cosmetology, about where you can go, what you can work in, who you are at that point. And then we actually start our life skills. We do communication, how to communicate. We work with, it's called professional image. And then we go into infection control, which is our main chapter, I guess you could say, in Cosmo 1, because you have to learn how to be safe. You have to learn how to protect your community, and you have to learn how to protect yourself. So it's a long 6, 8, 9 weeks that they're kind of just sitting. I don't want to say just sitting there, because we do some projects to get them up. I like to be up. I'm not one that likes to sit a lot. So I try to incorporate some fun things for them to do while they're in there. And then we do a couple other little chapters just to introduce them to hair, nails, things like that. And then we start learning the basics, how to work the chairs, how to work the sinks. I've seen a lot of students get a bath from not knowing how to operate a sink and drowning their or wetting their classmates as they turn on a sink. And then we just talk about the basics of hot tools. Then we talk about roller sets. We do some updos. We do manicuring and pedicuring, the first semester or talk about it. Sometimes we don't get all the way through. We only have a small 18 weeks with everything else in between there. So, and then they move on into their second, Cosmo 2. A lot of students who, that's kind of opening the door for them, Cosmo 1. Am I going to like this? Am I going to not? Something else we learn, if you don't want to touch, like if you don't want to have to interact with people, if you don't want to hold their hand, if you don't, not really hold their hand, but work with their hand, with the work with actually somebody being in close contact of you, it might not be the career you need, because you're going to have to be in somebody's, talking to them with communication, in kind of in their face, at their hands, at their feet, on messing with their hair. That's not a career that you can just not
And you don't really
interact.
Know, yeah, you don't really know until you try it, till you do it.
Right, you don't know. So Cosmo 1 is a great introduction to the beauty industry. A lot of them come in saying, I know how to do hair, I can do this, I can do that. Well, you probably can, but I'm going to teach you the safe way to do it and the backstory behind it. And then by the end of Cosmo 1, they're kind of like, okay, we either want to do this or we don't. So at that decision time, like kind of what we're doing now, they're calling them out, talking to them. I'm starting to plan that next year, and our counselors, who are amazing at both schools, talk to them about, okay, so this is what you have to take academically, and this is, I guess, if Cosmo 2, if they can fit it into their schedule and that's what they want, they try to get them in. And I have 25 slots. This semester I have 24 students, not 25, but 24, that have come back, and we blend. Like you said, we blend. We serve 2 high schools. Anderson County's kind of career and technical, we're kind of a standalone, not alone, but we are kind of our own little entity. But if it wasn't for our high schools, we wouldn't be there.
Correct.
So Clinton High School and Anderson County High School merged that Cosmo 2, and we try to separate, get as many from Clinton and as many from AC, but have that equal compound group to come in to have that class. It's pretty neat because, Clinton and Anderson County is kind of a rivalry, but here they are all together. And it works out well. That's how it was when I was in school, Clinton and Anderson County.
Yeah.
We just meet in the middle, and
they do a great job.
They do, and they become great friends. And I tell them, when you start and you merge into middle school, everything's changing. You meet new friends, new faces, because you're gathering from those elementary schools to that middle school. When you merge into high school, well, merging into cosmetology with Clinton and Anderson County, or a lot of our other programs, they get to meet new people, and they find new friends and new ways to interact, and I think it's pretty cool. And then they go to Cosmo 3.
Wait. So what do they do in cosmetology 2? What are they doing in there versus like Cosmo 1?
Okay, so Cosmetology 2 to me is the where you learn actually the most, because you really start. It's kind of I guess you could say, the meat of the program, because you have the beginning of your meal where you are fixing your meal, and then you get into the meat of it. You get into that main dish, and that's where you start learning how to do the actual hands-on manicure, the hands-on pedicure, really getting into the facials, learning how to apply color, learning how to apply highlights, learning how to do a relaxer, learning some balayage, or learning those names and those terms. We don't actually get to use the chemicals at that point, but we're using mock things to implement what tools and materials and chemicals we're going to be using in level 3.
Okay. So level 3, is it just chemicals, like doing color, or what else do we...
Right. So level 3 is kind of the one that sets you into motion with, okay, this is definitely what I'm going to do. I really like what we did in Cosmo 2, and I want to continue that, and I want to practice that, and I want to start mastering those skills before I go on into post-secondary or Tennessee, which is Tennessee School of Beauty, TCAT, Paul Mitchell, which we are blessed with all those schools in Knox County, and they get to start actually using the chemicals and not just using conditioner or to do color or shaving cream. They actually get to start applying true color and deciding, hey, this is a level 1, and I'm going to take it to a level 7. How do I get there? Or this is way out off of a 10, which is the highest level of what we call lift you can do, the lightest. how am I going to take that back down to a 2? How do I do that, and how to see it in their head. And I tell them that their mannequin, and I get excited to talk about because it's what I've done my whole life.
Yeah.
And that their mannequin, and I teach this in from Cosmo 1, their mannequin is their blank slate. It is there for them to see it and then apply it to their head. And how do you get to that? Can you do it? Are you able to do it? Can you look at something and make that happen? Or are you going to have to say, well, your hair might do this or it might not?
So do you give them creative license or freedom a little bit on what they do? Or is it very structured like?
Well, of course it's structured, Mr. Wade. We would never do anything off chart in Cosmetology 3. No, it is. It's structured as far as safety. We always have to read the manufacturer's label. That's what I always tell them. You always have to read manufacturer's label. If it says don't do it, you probably shouldn't do it. It's your license. It's a lawsuit if you don't do what you're supposed to do on your client. And we try to structure it as a real salon. So when they start mixing those chemicals, they're like, well, what do we do? I say, I guess you better read the box. Well, Miss McGhee, you've been doing this for a long time. Yes, Miss McGhee has, and Miss McGhee has a license, and I've been through those classes, and I've had to decide myself. And they're like, well, what if we get in the salon and we don't know what to do? I said, that's where you call on your coworkers or somebody who's been doing it a lot longer than you to say, hey, I might have this, but I need to talk to you about it, and see what you have to do. And most salons, when they transition to get their license into the salon, which is another big step, they have training programs, a lot of training programs that big salons have, so that they can kind of incorporate what they actually use, the products that they use, so that their stylists know.
Yeah. So a minute ago you mentioned TCAT, Tennessee School of Beauty, Paul Mitchell School. So TCAT, students can all earn dual enrollment credit.
Yes.
So you need 1,500 hours.
Yes.
To be a licensed barber cosmetologist. So they can earn dual enrollment hours through TCAT. How many hours? So if they go through, talk about that dual enrollment process, what that looks like, because that's another component of what you handle.
Right. So at the Career and Technical Center, we in cosmetology, as in a lot of our other programs, we have a dual enrollment program, which is through TCAT, which is our is it a federal
post-secondary partner?
It's a post-secondary partner, but it's our 2-year free, what they call free program.
Yeah,
last
Promise.
bottom dollar.
Tennessee
Promise. And so our students can go there even after they've done dual enrollment in my class. And I guess saying that, what it looks like is dual enrollment, it puts them on a college level. A lot of classes can take classes at Rome State, Pillissippi before they get out of high school. Cosmetology has dual enrollment where we partner with TCAT Knoxville, and they have provided some curriculum, a little bit different curriculum than what I use as far as curriculum. I use Milady's, they use Pivot Point, which is both on our state board when they leave. And so we want them to see and work with our students to be able to transition them into TCAT. And what that looks like for them is it makes them feel like they are on that college level in high school. And they come and we register them. We do our grant. We register them as a TCAT student. My TCAT students wear scrubs, just like the TCAT students do at TCAT in Knoxville. We have 4 levels. This year I get to do dual enrollment as a 4th level, which is pretty awesome. I have 5 girls in that class who have already been through Cosmo 1, 2, and 3. So they're doing Cosmo 4 as dual enrollment students. We have other classes who have dual enrollment in it, and it benefits them because it lets them see what the post-secondary world looks like. It lets them see what that college, that next step looks like, and how to do a college application, because they get to do it. I don't do it for them. Right. They get to do it, and I just kind of show them how to do it.
So it's free because it's paid
free,
for
yes.
through a grant.
Yes.
And it's for freshmen through seniors.
Yes, they get 4 classes.
How many hours? So if I go through all 4 levels, roughly how many hours can I earn toward that 1,500? That really saves them time and money after graduation, right?
So it depends. And I tell my students coming in, I start from the day they start in cosmetology, as me start lecturing them with their hands on whatever, they start getting cosmetology hours. Now what that is, the State Board of Cosmetology is separate from the State Board of Education.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't know that. So I award hours as they are in my class. So coming in as Cosmetology 1 students, you have 1.5 hours that you can be in my class as a Cosmo 1 student every day, because that's how long the block is. As a Cosmo 2 student, Cosmo 3 student, Cosmo 4 student, usually it's 3 hours, 2.5 to 3, 2.5 to 3 hours, because it's a double block with a small break in between. And so I start awarding those hours, and I start talking to them about how you get your hours. You only get your hours if you're in school. That is your body being present in school, up working. If you choose to set that day and you don't want to do anything, and you don't want to come in your dress code, and you just don't want to do anything, you don't get your hours that day. You still get your grade and you still get counted present, but your hours are earned.
So they have to be present.
They have to be
and they
present.
have to earn them just like they would
Yes.
at TCAT or
Absolutely.
Tennessee School of Beauty or the Paul Mitchell School.
Yes, and that being said, at the end of that, however long their career at my school is, or at Tennessee, at the Career and Technical Center, they have so many hours, and they can get, as long as they're in class and they're working, a lot of them have gotten up to 600-700 hours.
It's almost half.
Yes. Now, when we're not in school, if I'm not there, they don't get hours.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's kind
Yeah.
of part of it. So it just depends on the semester. It depends on how available they are to be. I encourage good attendance, but I try to have good attendance
So
also.
you're by doing dual enrollment,
Right.
you're eliminating half of the time that they would have to spend at a post-secondary school after graduation.
Right. Right now, they can start as Cosmetology 1 students with dual enrollment. It's more, as time goes on with the dual enrollment part of it, it's more beneficial because they can kind of come back in if they have that extra block and enroll as a dual enrollment student. So I think we were talking about it's 4 credits at the high school level extra that they could possibly get and come to my room and do a dual enrollment portion depending on how full my regular classes are.
Right. So I know one of the things that we do in our building with all of our programs is we encourage our teachers to participate in CTSOs, which are
Yes.
Career and Technical Student Organizations. So I know you guys participate in skills.
Yes.
So talk about what's the advantage of a student participating in skills and what that looks like, and what is skills? What do you guys do?
So our CTSO is skills, and we, for us older cosmetologists who took it in high school, it was VICA. So I remember being in it with Miss Dare, and she worked us very hard to do our best, and that's kind of what we do. We prepare them, we show them the way to compete, how to do skills, and then they go and compete. They have to do it on their own. We compete at the fair, and then we also go to regionals, which is actually this week, Thursday. I have a student going, and if they win at regionals, they can go to state. So when we go to state, it's been in Chattanooga, and we go down for a few days and compete in hair cutting, in updos, color, and if they win, there could be scholarships involved. It's just a great opportunity for them to kind of work as a team, not only as a team, but team building, and kind of getting away and seeing what other people from the state are doing and what that looks like.
So they're competing against other high school students from across the
Absolutely.
state, and if they go to the national level, from across the nation.
From across the nation.
And then there's Skills USA's offered in post-secondary as well.
Yes.
So that's something that they can continue to go on. So
Yes.
if you're not maybe competitive with sports or something else, like this is a way for you to be, it's a way for them to be competitive with what they enjoy, their passion, what they're good at, right?
Right, and that gives them the opportunity. Not everybody comes in as an athlete or someone who is great at anything other than cosmetology. I was not that person. I didn't want to do sports. I was in the band and I loved it and it was great. But this is a way for our students to feel like they are part of something bigger. I'm very supportive of athletics. My kids all did basketball. They cheered from the time they were little and did football from the time they were little. So I'm a huge athletic supportive person. But not all kids are that kid. And this gives them the opportunity to shine in ways that they may not have ever gotten the opportunity to show their parents how good they could be at something. Because I know with cosmetology, it's an art. It's a gift.
Yeah. So I know you've mentioned we've thrown out some names. We've talked about TCAT, talked about Tennessee School of Beauty, talked about the Paul Mitchell School. So another thing that we do is we have industry partners.
Yes.
So can you name some of your industry partners and what's the benefit of that, having that partnership with people out in industry, and what do the students gain from that?
So we partner with Metropolis out of Knoxville, and that has given us the opportunity. He actually has a student to stylist program. We've so far not had anybody get to go through it because they have to drive to Knoxville, and parents. I agree. Some parents, we are just a little particular about driving to Knoxville as teenagers.
Right.
So we haven't exactly had anybody get to take part in that yet. But when you have industry partners, it opens up positions for them while they are in high school at some of the places like Great Clips. At Metropolis, I had a student go in and work as a receptionist. The local, a couple of them around here, the Hair Loft with Sharon Manning, she is working with me. Tessa Holbrook just opened, I can't even think of the name of it, but people from our community who have been in the industry for a long time. Hannah Tyndall is now one of the estheticians, which is makeup, skin, over at where Tessa's at, and she was a student at Anderson County, not through my program, but she went to I think it was Tennessee School of Beauty that she went to, and now she's working here, and she's amazing, and she does a great job. So our industry partners help provide insight to what the business is ever changing, to what they are looking for as an employer standpoint. Metropolis has been so good to us when he has classes from, say, people from all over. He gives me the opportunity to bring a couple of my students. So there's been a couple of nights that we've gone to classes and sat through classes with his stylist who actually work there and stylists from other places. He's just really good about having the opportunity for our kids to grow and to have young stylists come in and witness what the industry has to offer.
So it's really helping them connect.
It helps them connect
to the real world
yes.
when they leave.
Yes.
And you're building that partnership with them allows you to stay current on what's going on in the industry.
Absolutely.
So it's you try to stay on the cutting edge as much as possible.
Yes, we have people come in from the industry side of it that is the sales aspect of it. We have people, I just had, I think his name was Mr. Mack, just came in from down in Florida and came in to talk to our kids last semester and had hot tools, and they were amazed at some of the tools that we have in the industry that maybe they haven't seen before, or maybe are a little more commercial than what they've used.
Yeah. So I know they can't be a licensed cosmetologist when they graduate,
right?
But can they earn any certifications that the state recognizes before they graduate?
Yeah. Yes, it is we have what we call a hair braiders certification, hair braiders license. They have to do 16 hours of safety and sanitation, infection control, and then they can apply for their license through the state of Tennessee, which is, like I said, different than this Tennessee Department of Education. So they can apply for that license, and that gives them a certification. I wish they could still get their license. I think it would be so beneficial to a lot of these kids.
And I know this. There's a huge safety aspect to it, especially when you're dealing with chemicals and sharp tools. So, could they have the potential to take OSHA in that program?
Yes, that is something that we've talked about. I know that some of the post-secondary schools are starting to kind of really look at that and maybe offer that when they get there. So if we can provide that before they get there, not only is it a gift to our students to already have some kind of certification, but it's a benefit when they get there that they don't have to take it there.
Well, and I think when they, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they apply for a slot at a school or a job down the road, it may put their application at the top of the stack because they've taken the initiative to do this work. They have to do it, but they have done it. And they've taken advantage of the opportunity in front of them.
Right, and I feel like there's a lot of advantages that we offer now as far as dual enrollment, as far as our certifications that help them get ready to be a ready graduate. I'm taking those post-secondary classes to whereas if they didn't take them at our school, they may not be able to do that.
So we're kind of coming to the end here. So if you could give one piece of advice for somebody that's wanting to go into the cosmetology field, whether they're thinking about, do I want to take this program, do I not, or maybe somebody that's leaving the program and graduating, or they want to go into the field in general, what's one piece of advice that you would give a young person that's thinking about this career or going into this field?
Just know that it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding being in this industry and seeing the changes that are being made in a good way to our industry and seeing people take advantage of it. And just, if this is the career they want to be in, just know how much they're helping people. You take somebody who maybe doesn't feel good about themselves and you send them for a fresh haircut and they feel like $1 million, or they get a new makeup application that they didn't know about and you provide for them. It's such a rewarding career, but they better be ready to work hard because it's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
We're not lazy in cosmetology. Everybody thinks, oh, it's just cosmetology. It's not just I'd like to have some people come just do cosmetology. So yeah, it's a lot of work. It's very rewarding though.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Mrs. McGhee.
Well, you're welcome, Mr. Wade.